Good.
So there's level 1. Hey, wait, Archie? No, that's different. That's DGB Archiver. I don't think that's Archie. Minutes. So how's it going in Peru, Renzo? While we're waiting for people to join. Listen.
Well, quite busy with politics and stuff. Everyone just keeps fighting.
Yeah, is it really bubbling up there, huh?
Yeah, most in the capital. Right now I'm not in the capital. Next week I'm gonna be, so just waiting there for me to join. But from here, well, I'm in northern Peru. Things are quite easy. So in terms of social convolution, right? So, but still, people want just to be like left alone, and the government not to bother them with stuff. They just keep fighting over that.
Oh, that's so sad. Be careful when you go to the Capitol next week.
Yeah, I don't live close to the center of the city, which is where the things got heat up sometimes. So that's a good thing. And I also ensure my air my air tickets to get there, because sometimes they just block the main ways just to protest.
Mm.
So I think I'm gonna be just safe now.
Okay. I mean, it's getting crazy out there, everybody. But well, in all the craziness though, there is something to be said about being able to still focus on something that you can feel like you're trying to help, at least, in
Yeah,
some way.
something to be part of.
Yeah. Try and participate. Hey, Archie.
Hey, Laura, how's it going? How's
Good.
everybody?
Thank you for being here. Do you have a cold?
I'm a little under the weather still. Well, I got better and I'm just back, so a little hungover today as well. And it's a Saturday.
Nothing.
I'm not as young as I used to be, unfortunately. But I'm very excited. Thank you, Renzo, Ollie, welcome, and thank you for being here for the Nodes chat. This is going to be great.
Hey, Ollie, you want to do a sound check for us?
Yes, I'm a bit worried my mic has got a problem.
Nope, you sound great to me.
Sounds pretty good. It sounds pretty good.
Hold on, let me just. I think it's switched.
Oh, I can't hear you. You might want to sing something.
You're so mean, John.
What would you like? What rendition?
Oh, anything. Jazz it up a little bit.
Hold on, let me just try. Is that working? Is that different? Nobody can hear me.
We can hear you. It's about the
Yeah, I
same.
can see you too.
Try.
I can hear you.
What's that? Can you hear me now?
Ooh, that sounds fancy.
Yeah, I bought a fancy mic, and inevitably, if you buy a fancy mic,
then it's breaking up now.
It's clipping a little bit.
Yeah, I've had this problem with it. You buy one of these expensive mics, and it just doesn't work. Hold on, I'm gonna have to go back to earbuds. Where are they? Okay, there we go.
Dealing with microphones, especially, are kind of annoying. Are you on Windows or are you on Linux right now?
Time I used it worked okay, and then today I plugged it in and it just something is clipping, and I don't know what. I don't. Frankly, it was one of those things where I should have looked at this like yesterday, but no, I left it to like 2 hours before.
It's all right. We go pretty fluid with the timings here. So I think so. The Archiver is just the Discord account I have on a second computer just to record the sessions.
Gotcha.
And yeah, we edit it out and everything. Laura, how do you feel about posting these maybe on YouTube or something eventually? Maybe when we have a couple more sessions in.
Yeah, I think once we kind of get a couple more sessions in, it might be nice to do like, just clips because these are kind of long conversations. But I mean, I'm open to it.
Okay.
And as long as everybody, we tell everybody that we're recording, so
Hey,
I think that would be.
are you just recording via just like audio, or are you doing an OBS pass through? Or
Exactly. Yeah, I'm just recording the channel on and the discussion through OBS on my separate laptop here.
Okay.
So we release these little clips. The clips are pretty popular that we release over on Twitter through the DigiByte Alliance Twitter, at least.
Oh yeah, I think those are good. I think those are good little just to get people interested and to see, what it's about. Worth 1,000 words, right? Waiting for Patrick. I just pinged him again. He should be here shortly. Oh, there you. Oh, I just pinged you. Did you see it? In Signal.
And no, I didn't. Oh well, maybe I did. Yeah, that's me.
Oh, okay. I was like, that's you, right?
Do you want me to share my screen?
Yeah.
You guys hear me? Is it still cutting out?
Still cutting out, Ollie.
I think it was okay when you had no video, though. Why don't you try that? See how if that makes a difference.
Hold on, let me get rid of the. I mean, I can always use the other mic. It's just the mic should be better, but to buy the thing, it doesn't work. Hold on.
It could be a Discord setting as well, where
I don't think it is. I think it's something. I even rebooted the system. It didn't seem to do anything. It wasn't when using it in earlier. It worked last time I did this, but I can't remember whether I was on the Mac or PC. Hold on. If I try, do I mute the video? Okay. Am I still there?
Yeah, you still sound spotty now for some reason.
I think that's just accept defeat on that one. Where is it? Go back to.
Maybe try getting off and then hanging up and going back in.
Yeah, don't worry about that. I'll just use the other headphones if I can find them. Hold on, where are they? Try.
Hold on, try that. Yeah, I just forget it.
This works.
Yeah, it's all right. You get one of those fancy Shure microphones and you can't even use it. Just in AirPods.
Yeah, that's just how it ends up sometimes.
Yeah, update that driver.
Yeah, and what I should do is actually spend an hour when I don't have this to do beforehand. So.
You're spending too much time in Uganda. That's what you're doing.
You got to be kidding me. I thought that was a pretty good joke. Okay. Are we...
I discovered that my VPS is so cheap because they're just, finding the most remote places to host servers, I guess. I was surprised that it was.
How much was the VPS there in Uganda?
Actually, no, it wasn't that cheap. It was actually with, I think it's like OVH. Can't even remember because I was using it for something else before I started using it for Cedar. I think it's like $5 a month or something.
That's kind of the average.
I did find one the other day. There's a company called Fast Hosts in the UK, and they're like, you can get a VPS with them for like £1 a month. So it's like $2, $1 to $2. And I was like, wow, I should switch to that. That's brilliant. Yeah, and it's not very powerful, but what I've been looking for is the things for these cedars that we need, and it's perfect for that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
To work.
Okay. Let's see how many do we have here? We got got a good little group started. Well, if everybody's ready, your sound's better, Ollie. To me, it is anyway.
Yeah, well, I'm just using the earbuds.
Yeah.
AirPods, whatever they're called.
If
No shame in the earbuds. Nothing wrong with them.
Until they run out of batteries halfway through.
What'd you say?
I said until they run out of battery halfway through.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, I think we're ready to get started. So this is our node discussion. One of the reasons we also chose this as a, one of the discussion points is there's just been a lot of work done with everybody in the community, especially Ollie and Renzo, with trying to get people better educated and motivated. So that's why we chose that topic now, and we need it. So just want to say before we begin, there's a lot of information here that we got directly from Ollie's work on his GitHub page, and we've referenced him a couple of times here in resources and other links. So I'm going to just shamelessly be like, thank you, Ollie, for walking us through all of this so much. And I don't know if contributor is the right word. It should be like King Node or something. I don't know. But
I'll take that, King Node.
King Node. Node King. I mean, we'll come up with something. So just want to say that before we jump into it. And we can go to the first slide, Patrick.
Okay.
So, in the presentation today, actually, before we get started, is there a way to just do a quick show of hands poll in here? I was just going to see how many people here run a node, if there's a way to quickly, or you can put it in the chat box.
You see that?
This is good. This is the first time I've ever used Discord for this thing. I'm like, how do I do that?
Yeah, same here.
Oh, good. So it's working. Verbatim chance. And this is nice too, because people can go back through and look.
Yeah, I found it.
So, got a couple node runners in here. I recently, thank you, John, started running a node. So before just want to see that before we jumped into it. So the overall objective here is to understand in a more kind of deeper sense, what a node is and why it's important for blockchain. And I'll say, getting prepared for this, I learned a lot in the process. So, just understanding the importance of it. And then what are the different types of nodes that make up DigiByte? We've had community discussions about, the running a full node, and then there's a node on the wallet, and there's test nodes and things like that. So we're going to go in more depth of what each one of those things is, and then we're going to end with how can you actually run a node? We go through the why, the what kind of nodes, and then the how can we run a node, and what's needed both in hardware and just instructional setup. So, and leave you with some resources on that. And I know there are some veteran experts, more expert than me in here. So while we're discussing, if you have something that you want to chime in about during the presentation, feel free to chime in if you want to fill in a gap there. But I think we're ready to get started. All right. So I took this when I was looking through materials and Medium articles and that sort of thing about what is a node. I saw a lot of different ones, and this one really stuck out to me of what is a node. And it kind of broke it down in more general terms of accessibility, validation, and maintenance. And it really is it's a piece of hardware that is part of the network that's running this. But what is it doing? It's allowing you greater accessibility to the network and others. It's obviously validating the network. But it's also maintaining the network in the sense that the more nodes we have, the stronger that network balance is. So it's a maintenance level event as well. And Patrick, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I think one thing that we kind of talk about is like the accessibility is that one of the biggest barriers to use is accessibility, right, on the blockchain. So this is a way once you can run a notice to make it more accessible. But I didn't know if anybody else would have any other three main purposes, right, in their own words that they think a node is.
I think I would just add that oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Alex.
A node is basically it stores the entire copy of the DigiByte blockchain. So essentially, if you run a full node, you actually on your computer have the entire history of DigiByte that has ever existed. So if every other node on the network was to disappear, you could rebuild the DigiByte blockchain from your machine. So that is the thing of a decentralized ledger. Everybody has an identical copy of all of those verified blocks going all the way back to the beginning, running on their machine.
Well said. Well said. And yeah, it's basically keeping each other honest, right? But
another thing about nodes. Oh, sorry, I got disconnected. Okay, well, I was saying that another good thing about Node is that allows participants of the networks being able to decide which protocol version it's the best to learn. When the developers release changes to the protocol in form of a new version of the software, miners and basically every node can decide if they want to update, if they approve those changes. And if 51% of the network approve those changes, a new version of the DigiByte has just been born or it has been enabled in the network. It's a way of the different people that it's a way of different people approve or reject changes all proposed by different developers out there. If you don't like or if you don't think it's worth it, a new update, then you just don't upload your node. And if a lot of people agrees with you, 51% to be exactly, then the network does not update to that new version. Or in the contrary, if you believe that a change in the protocol, in the software, it's good, then you update your node, and that way you show and you approve those changes. And if enough people approve them, then you have a new version of the running.
That's
so
like
that's validation.
Difficult to know when to speak.
Can I ask Renzo a question?
Yeah.
So when it's time to update your node, because I do have a node, how do you update it? Is it a whole new patch you download, or is it just something that you click in the wallet or something? I don't know.
What is cool about that is that it's already been implemented inside the programs, the code. You just need to stop running the current software, install the new one, and continue running it. The new software is gonna recognize the blockchain that you have, and it's gonna just continue building the chain over there with the new rules. So you just need to turn off your the old software and start a new one. That's basically the process of updating it. Of course, you just need to download the new version from trusted source, and basically that's it. Well, that's one of these ways some programs include an update function, but I think that's the form that I presented here. It's the best one because you rely or you ensure that you're running the totality of the new software.
Thanks, Renzo. And we can we'll also have some time for more detailed questions at the end as well. To get some more like lessons learned, how to, that sort of thing. So let's move on to the types of nodes and discuss that a little bit. And there was a learning process in making this slide. We're gonna focus on the full nodes, but I didn't realize there were so many different types of nodes when I was first doing my research. So so with the full node, that's the one that keeps the entire blockchain up to date. And there's different types of full nodes. We're obviously DigiByte's proof of work, but there's proof of stake nodes, which we're not going to get into. But it just depends on the consensus model you're working with. Since we're proof of work, we're going to focus on that. And basically it's ensuring that the network is completely up to date and has a distributed governance model. It requires, it's going to require more infrastructure to run a full node, but it contains the entire blockchain. The light node, that's from what I understand, that is what like the mobile apps are using the light node, which doesn't keep the entire blockchain. It actually has to, it's counting on the full nodes, and it'll have to connect to a full node, but it's a lot faster. But it's trusting the full node that it's connected to, because it doesn't have the entire chain on it. And if anybody do you want to say anything more about that, Patrick, about the light node in terms of app use?
Yeah, inside the full node category, you have 3 different subcategories that can fit into it. Because a full node, as you said, is the one that stores the whole blockchain. But there's an important module inside a full node, which is the miner. So if you run a full node, you can also include the miner or run it without it. In that way, you can decide if you want to create new blocks for the network or if you just want to store the blockchain. And in the light nodes, there are some few categories, and once again, I think 3 of them, which will be the regular SPV wallets. That are the ones that, well, you have, for example, with the DigiByte mobile app. And you have some other light nodes, like the ones that are used for pool mining, that has a special module that receives data from the pool and a miner module that allows the creation of blocks. And there is another kind of model, which is the Strike wallet, which is basically just the communication level of blockchain that allows just to be like a router for transactions. That's inside the light node. So it's great the comparison you made here between storing the full node, the full blockchain, and storing, just the other things. And keep in mind that a testnet node can be either a full node or a light node. But in the terms of right now, the DigiByte blockchain as is right now, our testnet nodes are basically another type of node that we manage. Not because it can't be a full or a light node, but just because we have few tested nodes that than main node. So we just consider them as a third type of node, which is not bad. It's just how the way we're our current state as a network right now.
Thank you for that, Renzo. That was really helpful. And you brought up a good point when you were talking about, the full node can be thought about in terms of a minor node, because that's a discussion that we had with with Ollie when we were preparing this was I thought if you had a miner, and we're going to discuss this in a later slide a little bit more. I thought if you had a miner, you had to run a node, and that's actually not true. And so that's why we decided to kind of break it up into these three. And as far as the test node goes, I wanted to give Dan a chance to talk a little bit about that. Because he's trying to get some support on some more test nets running.
Yeah, I know. Ollie, I think it was you that was it in December that we kind of made a little push there to get more testnet nodes up and running.
We did, yeah.
Yeah, I've been running one for off and on for a few years. I think there was a little bit of time that I did not, but I've tried to keep it running because obviously, if anybody wants to develop on DigiByte, then we need that testnet node. We need to make sure that's still up and running and available for people. So that's one of the reasons I have kept it there and kept it running. I mean, I personally have not developed anything, but I want to make sure that ability is there for people. And I know, when we made that push in December, I forget how many nodes I was seeing, maybe 12 or so, maybe 15.
Yeah, we've got about 10 or so right now, I think.
Yeah, I'm including myself. I think I'm seeing like 8.
We've actually got 9 because I just had to unplug my laptop for a second.
Oh, okay. Okay, so yeah, I've seen the number drop down a little bit. So yeah, I periodically out on Twitter and different places, Telegram and stuff. I try to mention to people, yeah, if you're running a mainnet node, it's not difficult and does not use many more resources to run a testnet node also. So do it if you can.
Well, definitely.
Yeah,
In
we don't need
space
a
because our
lot of.
testnet is small.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Kind of good. I think I was just going to add. Network, we don't need a lot of people running testnet nodes, but we do need a sort of bare minimum to keep that network going. So
Right.
when a developer wants to build on it, it's there and ready for them to use. And of course, in this still early time of DigiByte, there isn't that many people running them. So I think at the moment we have about 10 nodes. It would be great if we could get another 10, because that would just mean that it was a bit more robust. We can get some people to commit to just say, I'll run a testnet node just to make life easy for developers. So
Yep.
that's,
Yeah, I think if we can make sure we keep a handful of them running all the time, so we're not kind of like we were in December when people were struggling to even get new ones up.
Yeah, hopefully there'll be more. We'll get more education out there, more resources out there for people, and I honestly, before I started doing this research, that part of it I didn't really understand that well, and now I was like, oh yeah, we really, I can see where, the more resources need to be driven there. So, thanks for the work on that, guys. I think we're ready for the next one, unless anybody has anything else they want to add to that last point.
I think the only thing I would add, which maybe some people here don't know, is that if we're talking about a testnet node is actually functionally identical to a mainnet node. The only difference really is that everybody has agreed that DigiByte mined on testnet are worthless. So they're only used for testnet. But the testnet is essentially a completely identical network in terms of functions. It's the same as mainnet. So it has its own nodes and its own miners and its own seeders, and all of those things work together. But the difference is that everyone has agreed that the coins on that network are not worth anything. So developers can then use the testnet to experiment, and if they lose all of their DigiByte in some bad transaction, they're not going to be crying because they were actually real DigiByte, they're test DigiByte.
That's a good point, Ollie. That's a really good point. Thank you for adding that. Okay, and so for our next slide, we're talking a little bit about the difference between miners versus nodes, which we hit on earlier with what Renzo was saying. But the miners, they're adding the transactions to the blockchain. but it's the nodes that are keeping that ledger, right? So this was the thing that I really was a real learning experience for me. Was I thought if you were a miner, you had to be running a full node, and that's not true. I mean, if you're mining in a pool, then you just have to have a pool administrator running a node. And then pretty much everything is going through these full nodes, as you can see through the graphic, and it kind of really illustrates that it is that foundational layer for the whole network, is to keep these nodes, running, distributed, and as many as we can, both in testnet and in mainnet. So, um, if anybody has anything else they want to add to that as far as the miners versus nodes conversation.
Yeah, ideally, that graph should at least being able. I mean, okay, sorry. Ideally, full nodes are usually connected to each other, which I think this graph or this chart represents correctly. Just one thing. Remember that light nodes, as they don't have blockchain inside them, they do not transmit any data, only the messages or requests to full nodes. So sometimes a light node that is out there, it's only querying the network for data, but not transmitting anything to the. So yeah, basically that.
So
And
it's
miners,
should Renzo, would it be appropriate, like, if we had an arrow?
Yeah,
On that,
I was
yeah,
thinking
something like that.
Okay, that's a good
Yeah, I think,
suggestion.
and I think this chart does a really good job illustrating the general like structure of like the decentralized network. But yeah, I think the full nodes are they're communicating bidirectionally, I believe, right? So they're communicating with each other, verifying amongst themselves, especially when submitting transactions and everything. And yeah, I think the light node is more the light node and the miner as well are more of just communicating with the nodes more superficially. Is that correct?
Yes, they act as askers, and the nodes are the responders.
That's a good way. Ooh, that's good.
Which one's the request, did you say?
Oh, the one who asks are the miners and the light nodes, and the ones that answers are the full nodes. But the type of asks that the miner do is just for the transactions that are not included in any block. So the mempool.
They're just receiving a message.
Yeah, maybe
and sending any block if they found one.
They're
can I just
listening.
hello? So I was just going to suggest that maybe I think Renzo, you're probably best qualified to explain this, but maybe you could just explain how a transaction being sent from a wallet actually gets kind of added to the blockchain. And you could just talk it through as in how it goes to the mempool and gets distributed out to the nodes and so on. I mean, I sort of know, but I feel like you're probably better qualified to explain it than I am.
Yeah, sure. Well, the thing, or the beautiful thing is that to create a transaction, you don't need a node. You don't even need to install the DigiByte software. You just need some special programs with some rules and signers and elliptic curves algorithm, and you can create a transaction offline. Of course, knowing some data that you previously have queried from the blockchain, the money that you have, the outputs that you previously received, the UTXO. The correct term is UTXO. So once you create a transaction and sign a transaction, you have a special group of bytes that represents that transfer of assets, transfer of money. So it's just an artifact that tells where DigiBytes are and where DigiByte will be after that action. So you just need to send that transaction to a node, no matter what type of node. It could be a light node, a full node, or even a miner. It doesn't matter. You just need to send them to someone. And that someone is going to replicate the transaction among the network in something called a mempool. The mempool is a special bucket of data where new transactions are received. There's just not being confirmed yet, so you don't know if they're valid transactions. You just know that someone just submitted that and you need to check that. And as a node, you just need to verify that it's a valid transaction, which means that follows all the DigiByte rules. And if it's a valid transaction, if you're a miner, then you just use that transaction and try to include it in a block. If you're a full node, you just pass the transaction around, just send it to other nodes and for some miner to catch it and try to add it for a node. And if you're a light node, then the most probable case is that you are just like a mailbox where a user sends the transaction for you to replicate. And once that transaction has been added to the network via a miner, then that block with your transaction is going to be once again replicated among the network, and that's how your transaction has been added to it.
That's great.
Thanks, Renzo. That was a good explanation. So yeah, that getting that difference between miners and nodes, you don't get the benefit of, you don't get the benefit of coins for running a node, but you do get the benefit of knowing you're participating in securing the network, supporting the network. Speaking of which, do you want to go on to that next slide, Patrick? So why would you want to run a node? And, I think the discussion so far has been, makes it pretty clear, but here are the high points that we were wanted to focus on is, it's educating yourself, because in order to run a node, you're having to, go to resources, to, download the blockchain, open up your port, become part of the network. There's a process in that's going to require education. So you get more educated about the network itself. It's creating more nodes distributed across the world, just validates our decentralization. And, to be part of DigiByte, really, that's kind of the big D word right there. So to help decentralize the network, and better network performance. So, as everybody was saying earlier, when you don't have enough nodes and you're trying to do things, things are slower. It's not as it's not as user friendly. So having more nodes to choose from, having more nodes to connect or to connect to your own, it's a better network performance all around. And I feel like we're all preparing for a storm here, and so we put in the word redundancy because when you prepare for a storm like a hurricane or something, you don't just you try to be as redundant with like your fuel sources, your light sources, that sort of thing. So redundancy is kind of synonymous with resiliency, and so to make us more redundant makes us more resilient as a network. And the ethos of DigiByte is don't trust, verify, right? Right up there with Bitcoin. So participating as a node just strengthens, it's kind of putting your money where your mouth is. It strengthens the entire ethos of DigiByte. The more people we have participating at that level of ensuring the network. So those are some of the main points that we were, when we were discussing these last couple of weeks. Why would you want to run a node? Because really it's kind of a good Samaritan. You're not getting paid to do it. You're actually spending, resources to do it. Why would you want to do it? So these were our big points that we came up with. Does anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah, I think running a node is like in the essence, it is like the most beautiful part of DigiByte and all decentralized, especially like proof of work blockchains, in my opinion. Because you don't really get anything out of it. Although I do want to talk about some things that we could do as a community to incentivize nodes, especially now that we've got like a good group of actual builders. But I just think it come as you guys were saying earlier. If it comes down to it, one person could run the only DigiByte node, and that's how some of the other blockchains out there or some of the other cryptos are operating with that type of centralization. But the whole point is to have everyone come in, everyone run their own node, and everybody and have that strength in numbers. So it's running a node is my favorite part of the blockchain.
That was well said, Archie.
Yeah, I think also that it's important to stress that don't trust and verify thing on running your own node. Whenever you interact with the DigiByte blockchain, you have to interact with a node of some sort. And as long as if you use a wallet like Koinomi, let's say, for example, you have to trust that Koinomi's node, is behaving as it should, and it's trustworthy. You're putting your trust in their node. Now, Koinomi are obviously a legitimate company. They have their reputation to stand on, so they have an incentive to run a node which is trustworthy. But you are essentially offloading that trust onto somebody else. If you run your own full node, you can interact with the blockchain in a way that doesn't require any third party. You have a complete way of connecting to it without having to trust anybody else. You can initiate a transaction directly from your own node. And the nice thing about running your own node is if you then have a mobile wallet at home, or for example, you want to run a DigiAssets node as well, you can then use your node along with the DigiAssets node to create your own DigiAssets so it's not just the transactions. If you're using DigiAssets as well, you get that added benefit. That you can mint your own DigiAssets from the machine sitting in your home, or if that's where your node is, that is.
So I guess you guys want to differentiate between the type of nodes you can run with DigiByte, because I know we have the DigiAsset node, the DigiByte node, the test node. Yeah.
Yeah, it's important to differentiate a DigiByte node and a DigiAsset node. The DigiByte node is like a ship that allows you to navigate through the network. And the DigiAsset node, it's like a container on that ship that navigates the network with the DigiByte full node. They're not equal. It's like the DigiAsset node serves or it asks the DigiByte node about the information of the blockchain, and in order to just do what it needs to be done in order to ensure the the DigiAsset protocol.
Yeah, that's a good point. Make this.
Yeah, it's a second layer that runs on top of
It's a second layer
on the DigiByte rails. It's like a train running on the tracks of DigiByte.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, that's a good way to say that. And we can add that in. We can add that in later. Put in a on that slide about adding in an asset node. Speaking of running nodes, how are we going to do that? So, you can do it a couple ways. I mean, really, a node is the hardware, right? So, you can use an old computer, laptop or PC, or you can use Raspberry Pi, which is it uses a lot less energy, and you can kind of set it and forget it and put it in the corner because it's dedicated only to a node, where an old laptop might not be I'm using an old laptop and it's not, super sexy. So, but as far as, using a laptop or a Node or or a Raspberry Pi, 8 gigabytes is what you're looking for. So with Raspberry Pi, there's several different ones out there, but look for the ones with 8 gigabyte or better, which will allow you to run. And most computers, I think, have that. Mine did, and mine's pretty old. So, but that allows you to have, a regular full node, which I think a 4 gigabyte will just run a full node. But if you get 8 gigabyte, then you can do a full node and a DigiAsset node, or if you want to run more. So just to allow yourself that room. And Dan, I think, has a trick on how to get a Raspberry Pi because they're in back order.
Yes.
But,
yeah. I don't know if anybody wants to know that or not, but
I'll let you tell them because they're hard to get right now. So there's some barriers to entry there. So, but if you have an old laptop or old computer, you can dig that out or buy an old one off Craigslist or something until Raspberry Pis are the one you want is available. You could do it that way as well. But you can go ahead, Dan, and give the special
no,
method.
I noticed that it seems like on Adafruit their stock hits between 11:15 and 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I would have it added to my cart and everything, have everything set up. Your multi-factor authentication that you have to have set up to be able to purchase through them. Have your credit card in there, but in that time frame, the stock will come in and check out quickly. And I was able to get one. In fact, it arrived yesterday. So, but that when I was just randomly looking, they were never in stock. Once I noticed that that's when they came in stock, it was pretty easy for me to grab one.
Thank you for the tip. And John had a good point. I want to have him add this too, because I was thinking of if you're running a full node physically, at your house or office or wherever, but also there, you can do it via the cloud. And I'll let John kind of add to that.
I mean, yeah, there's some providers where like DigitalOcean, AWS, Linode, Ollie knows a few too as well, where you can just host your node on a cloud. You don't have to have it at your own house if you don't feel that that's the best way to do it. But again, you really want to decentralize and distribute, and not just have it on the cloud. I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, it's all DNS and controlled by different service providers, but there's an option for that too. And I think the cheapest I've seen, Ollie, what's the cheapest you've seen for enough to run a node, not a Cedar?
The truth is, I haven't really looked because the complication is that DigiByte requires so much RAM.
Yeah.
You need 4 gigabytes of RAM. And the problem is that a VPS, a virtual private server or other cloud service, it can get quite expensive. But I imagine for $5 to $10 a month, you could probably find a service to run it on. I mean, that's definitely a good way to do it. I mean, I think for a lot of people, if you already have access to a VPS, maybe your business uses one or your office has one that you can borrow storage on. There are ways of doing it, but I think it's the issue is the memory, and of course, because of the 5 algorithms in DigiByte, it does make it probably more expensive than it would be to run a node for, let's say, Bitcoin. But it's definitely doable. It's definitely a good option if you want to spend the money to do it.
Absolutely. Anyone try Orange Pi versus Raspberry Pi?
I haven't. I don't see why it wouldn't work.
I just see those all over the place. And while Raspberry Pis are out, there's Orange Pis are in stock.
I mean, I'm sure some of you've seen I created this thing called DigiNode Tools, and it's designed to work. I built it with a Raspberry Pi in mind, but it also works on Intel hardware. So I would have thought there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to run it on an Orange Pi or on an old PC or any of these things. I mean, I was going to talk a little bit. Is that the reason I kind of like the idea of a Raspberry Pi is because if you can obviously use a cloud service, but that costs quite a lot of money, or can do over a long period of time. Or you can obviously use a computer, and if it's your main desktop computer that you have in your house or your main PC, it uses quite a lot of memory, and it can kind of eat into the resources on your machine if it's also your day-to-day computer that you use. So that's why it's kind of nice to have a machine that you can kind of stick in the corner. It's really nice and compact. Doesn't have a screen and a keyboard and a mouse and all of these other things, attached to it that take up loads of room. You can literally put it on a Raspberry Pi in a very small, compact case, put it on a shelf somewhere, and just let it run and know that that is helping the DigiByte network. And the advantage of that is that it's easy to keep it running 24/7 because you don't, and that's the best way to support the network. You want a machine that's running, all day, every day, checking off each block as it comes in, it's kind of what you want. So a Pi is nice. They're compact and small. And actually, they're also, the nice thing about Raspberry Pis is because, currently the stock problem is a bit of an issue. So they're a bit hard to get hold of at the moment, but that should improve in the next quarter. Q3, apparently, it should be almost back to normal. But they're very established. They're easy to get hold of. And the software to install an operating system onto the Pi is really easy to use and nice. So you can literally plug in an SSD that you're going to run the operating system for your Pi into your main computer, run what's called Raspberry Pi Imager software, and it will install the operating system onto the drive. And you plug it into the Pi, turn it on, and then you can immediately then remotely connect to it. And I actually have a full tutorial on GitHub. I think Laura's going to include a link to it. If you have a Raspberry Pi 8 gigabytes, then and want to run a DigiNode on it, or like DigiByte or DigiAsset node, you can follow the tutorial. And I have tried to write it in such a way that even someone who considers themselves to be not that technical should be able to follow along all the steps and get set up.
Yeah, I worked. Ollie, you helped me out running that DigiNodes client, and I gotta say, like, it's such a beautiful piece of software, in my opinion, and coupled with the Raspberry Pi, which is this micro computer, but these Raspberry Pis are also much. Some of them are stronger or more powerful than desktop computers from just like 10 years ago or so in some cases. So the thing with the Pi is, and Ollie's Node Tools client is that like you really are running your own server at that point. And this is where it gets a little technical, because you're running kind of a headless client, so like there's no graphics user interface with it. But at the end of the day, like, and Ollie helped me set this up, is that you kind of SSH in. So like you can remotely check up on your node from your separate computer, like on the same network. And it's really a really cool piece of tech. I think maybe we should kind of go in and more on that. And I'd love to promote that more on the DigiByte channels. And not only that, but you're also running a DigiAsset node with it. And I mean, it's all on a Raspberry Pi. It's really cool. It's really cool stuff.
It's good. It's been a labor of love.
Yeah, it's awesome though. But it's.
If anybody's interested, I actually did on the recent Get Right with DigiByte podcast. I think it went out just after just in the new year. I actually did a live demo of DigiNode Tools, of installing it, so you can get a sense of what you need to do. I mean, I tried to basically design this so that you really don't need almost any experience with Linux. in order to install this. It tells you every single command you need to type in before you need to type it in. So I think if you've never used Linux before, don't let that stop you. And if you're intimidated by the fact that it doesn't have a screen and a keyboard and a mouse, also don't let that stop you, because it explains everything on how to do it. And I think there's 2 commands you need to be able to type into the interface.
And Laura, I think on the Alliance side of it, I think it is a really good, segue into the education aspect of both the networking, IT, everything. So it's very very beneficial part of the blockchain. So got a little quiet in here. Laura, if you're talking, you're muted, just in case. But yeah.
Oh shoot! I didn't realize I was muted.
I was moving on to the next slide.
I was just talking away. No, I agree. I think that the opportunity to run a node in whatever form, but is it's something that needs more attention and needs more support. So really appreciate all the materials everybody's making behind that and efforts into it. So before we or right after we announced that this was going to be the topic, I asked on Twitter what were some good analogies for Node, and this is what I got back. And I thought it was, some people use Chat GPT, which is funny. They should have asked Dan GPT and see what he would have said. No, but but I thought these were some really good good analogies. I always think of it as the Good Samaritan is what I think about as like the Good Samaritan of the blockchain. But and I think analogies are really helpful in educating. What analogies would you like, looking at these? What ones would you say?
For me personally, I like the biological analogies for like blockchain nodes and everything, and yeah, I think like personally, like it would probably be, for me, the cell is an interesting one, because if the blockchain is like digital DNA, and I think there's a good case for that. You could say that, yeah, like the node is like maybe the nucleus, that's where it's all being synthesized, that's where it's being distributed, and that's like what everything is built on top of. So that's my favorite analogy. You would say like, yeah, the blockchain data is the DNA aspect, and everything else, like the node runner itself is like is the nucleus, the nucleolus. It's the hardware where that DNA is built, manufactured, and expanded upon.
Yeah, I think Jared Tate does a good job of doing the biology analogy. He talks about, if your finger was cut off, you don't lose all your DNA because your DNA is distributed through your whole body. So if a node does go down, there's hundreds of other nodes that can help back it up.
And hopefully one day thousands.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have one they want to add that's not in here? It does.
I wanted to
visualize.
make
go
a
ahead,
comment.
Lucy.
So it's not so much of an analogy, and I shared it in the text box, but it's more of a, if people want to participate in a decentralized peer-to-peer network, this is like part of it, that you run your own nodes.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of like network self-resiliency, right, Jose?
Yeah, Laura, I'm just like you when it comes to like running a node. I joined the community in 2018, and I just got my node up about a year ago. So, being a part of the community, just like Jose said, is building a node. And I think, as you grow in DigiByte, that's ultimately the next step.
Yeah, I think I think that's really well said. I mean, for some people, it's, I think it is a natural evolution the more serious you get about your sport or DigiByte, because it's not, when it becomes about more than like I bought a coin and I'm waiting for it to go up, but I want to participate in this network, and support it. It's it's kind of an evolution that I think people go through. Some come right into it, but I mean, it took me a while, and I had a lot of help to do mine. But I was waiting for a new computer because I only had the one, and I work on my computer, like I work remotely, and I'm like, oh, if anything happens to this computer, I'm dead in the water. So I waited until I got an upgrade and used my old computer and transferred it over. But it feels good. It feels good seeing it sit in the corner.
Yeah, I definitely don't recommend using the computer that you use, because I'm running a Node on my MacBook and it's just slow. So like you said, I think it was safe that you didn't do that.
Yeah, I'm always cautious. And so now we've got one more slide, and this is just our resources slide. This is where I have Ollie's information. I found another article on how to run a node if you're running on Linux. And then there's a lot out there in nodes, but I thought these 3 articles seem to do a pretty good job of explaining it in different ways, so you can kind of dig in deeper on those 3 if you might find those helpful. And then we've got the node crawlers out there that can kind of check and see what's going on. Public node has just a map of everybody. And I do want a big shout out to Frederick and John too from the Alliance, with all of it kind of got everybody's gears in order, geared up to work on the nodes and the testnet nodes. So I think those guys also put a lot of effort into that. So I want to give a shout out to them. I don't even think they're on the call, but I know they worked really hard to help people get that all up and running and straightened out. So, and so this is pretty much our presentation. This, if you were gonna, if you wanted to use this, we'll post this in resources. But if you want to use this PowerPoint to present to anybody else, there's notes that you can't see on here, but there's notes on each slide that goes with, some talking points, and we might actually change a little bit of this based on the feedback with Renzo, like, the directional arrows on the graphic and maybe a couple actual other notes to add to it. But that's pretty much our presentation. And we can kind of use the rest of the time. I know we're at an hour, but if we want to spend a little bit of time talking about, like Archie had some ideas on how to maybe motivate people to run nodes more than we have, because it isn't incentivized right now as it is, other than, just, DigiByte lovers. So before we end this part of it, does anybody have any questions for us on the presentation part?
I guess I have one question, in case anybody would ever bring this up. If somebody has a question about, are you more susceptible to potential hacking or anything if you are running a node with your IP address out there in the list? Is that a concern to anybody, or what would be a good response to that?
I don't know the specific.
And almost especially maybe more if you have a seeder and try to run in a seeder at your home, depending on what that domain name is, if it's your own personal domain name, which may be a little more connection back to you personally. So, yeah.
I think someone who, and maybe Ollie or Renzo would have good insight on this as well, but someone that definitely knows about this is Johnny Law, Mark. He has mentioned that he's noticed, to me once, he mentioned that he noticed a little bit, some probing of his network and some perhaps malicious looking stuff when he was running his own open node with or node with an open port. So That is something to be aware of. But does anyone know specifically if there's any risks of opening your port?
Yeah, of course, there's always risk, but with some well-defined firewall rules that only allows support 12.0.24 for DigiByte and 12.0.26 for testnet, then you shouldn't have enough. You shouldn't have a problem. Some of the dangerous ports, if you just open your IP to the internet, are of course the SSH 2280 for the HTTP requests and stuff. So you just don't do DMC, the demilitarized zones, to all your ports. Just open the ones that are needed. That's the main advice that I think I can give.
Right, and then having, I mean, good security on the computer that you are pointing to make sure I don't know, nobody can get into that computer then hop anywhere else. But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I've noticed, and I have no idea if this is connected or not, but I've noticed odd things with my router over the past couple years, where it reboots sometimes a number of times throughout the day, and I've never known for sure, does this have anything to do with, you know, the mining I'm doing, or, you know, the running the nodes that I'm running. I've never been able to target that, but, you know, pinpoint it to that, but I just don't know.
Well, if you work on an elastic IP, then probably it's just your internet provider just keeping those things fresh up and changing your IP. But I don't know how your network works, so no idea.
Yeah.
My router restarts occasionally, but I know that that's because it's a shitty router, not because of any other reason. I mean, I think one thing I would add is that if you make a full node and you also use the wallet, and Renzo, please feel free to correct me on this or jump in if I'm not explaining it right, but the wallet is kind of kept separate from the network. So if you open port 12024, there's no way for anybody to get at the wallet. You're simply exposing the relevant port so that it can communicate with the rest of the DigiByte blockchain, or the rest of the DigiByte blockchain can communicate with your node. That's the purpose of opening that port.
Right.
Yeah, and just one thing to add into the reference part, I would love to recommend a chapter of a book that I read last year. Allows me to just deep into the nodes and the architecture of the DigiByte blockchain. The book is called Mastering Bitcoin, by Andreas Antonopoulos, and the chapter is number 6, the Bitcoin Network, which talks about basically everything we just discussed today, and has a really informative diagrams and really allows you to understand, well, in a high level, concepts to Bitcoin and therefore the DigiByte network.
Oh, Ali, you're really.
I can just there.
Sick.
There you go.
That's my God! Yeah, exactly the same book that I have over here. Yeah, some chapters are free and. Sorry?
Yeah, it's for Bitcoin, but because Bitcoin is based on, or DigiByte is based on Bitcoin, you can literally, whenever there's a command in that book that says the word Bitcoin, you put in the word DigiByte and you can type in the same command.
Yeah, control, replace, control F, replace. Yeah. Checkproof 6, I think it's free on internet. It's a little bit outdated. The recent editions has a little bit more information, but there's no mistake, so anyone can look it up for it. Oh, and one more thing, if you have some knowledge into coding, you can interact by yourself with the DigiByte blockchain. using a library. Well, some libraries out there. I wrote one. It's called DigiByte -JS P2P. And with that thing, you can literally tag to the DigiByte blockchain, which I think it's pretty neat, pretty cool. Yes, to have some fun and to understand this a little bit better.
That is fair. But yeah, can I talk a little bit about how we can incentivize nodes?
Yeah, I think that's perfect. Let's wrap it up with that.
Okay. Yeah. So this is an idea I've had for a long time, but it's been kind of distorted in crypto and whatnot. And I think one of the easiest things that we could do, and maybe the Alliance could get involved, maybe it could be a new group, but I think a community-led effort that uses the DigiAsset protocol to incentivize nodes with something not necessarily for any, monetary value. That's what it always ends up going to in crypto. Like people start thinking, how they make the big bucks out of everything. But I think we would benefit now, and I think now is a good time to pull something like this off because of the recent DigiByte protocol updates, the DigiAsset updates, is rewarding, people that run a node in a fair, decentralized manner, somehow giving them a DigiAsset that just indicates that they've run this node for, say, a month straight, a week straight, or a year straight. That lets them, that you could even say, hey, he's run a DigiByte node, or he's run a DigiByte node and a DigiAsset node, or a testnet node. Like, I think that's well within the realm of possibility. But I don't have the technical knowledge myself to make it happen. But I have the domain name Node Rewards, and I think another thing that this could do is if we can make it work for DigiByte, I'm sure we could make it work for Bitcoin and Litecoin and other real decentralized UTXO blockchains. So it could really be a thing that helps elevate DigiByte, in my opinion. But again, I'm not the one that could program it, unfortunately. But I'd like to hear your guys' ideas about something like that.
I did actually have a similar idea myself. I mean, they say, that it would be cool to have a DigiAsset that you give out to people as a reward for running a node. Mm-hmm. I think that's a really fun idea. It's difficult though. I'm trying to think how you would verify that they are running a node. That's the tricky part. I mean, you can say I'm running a node and then you just give them an asset, but that sort of would defeat the point.
Yeah, and that's the balancing act, because something like that does seem like it would have to be somewhat centralized, or you'd have to pull in some information. Like, I don't know if it would be a good idea to. I had the idea looking at the nodes.host. What is it? Host.digibyte.host. The node map. And I think there's a lot you could do with running a node as like the foundation of a new type of like not a social media of sorts, but you have your node. It's gonna be marked. It's all public because it is. But if there's some way that we could prove ownership of the node, but that does not give out your IP address, you personally, like, it doesn't identify. So it's a little bit of a tricky situation. I have thought about it. Is there anything you could think, Ollie? Like, you could. That's the thing. Like, I'm sure there's ways to put it into like a discrete part of the DigiNodes client that you've developed, but I don't think that would be good for. That doesn't seem to fit the decentralized ethos. It doesn't. It seems to be more of bloatware. I don't want it to go into that kind of territory.
Yeah, it's tricky because I think that if you have if I had DigiNode tools calling home in some way, I feel that's a bit invasive.
Exactly right.
It wouldn't be. I mean, there's the one feature I did with help from Renzo, which actually isn't out. This is why I have to keep pushing Laura and John and everyone to do this. Is that Renzo developed some CEDA software. I actually built in a way to test your ports by querying Renzo's node crawler service that's online, and it will from DigiNode tools itself, just to check that your node is running. And it did sort of occur to me that at that point there might be an opportunity to kind of go, well, here's a node, it's connected to me, let's send it a DigiAsset or something like that. I'm also not technical enough in terms of programming the blockchain to do that, but maybe Renzo had an idea. There could be something you could do.
Yeah, that software technically belongs to the DigiByte Alliance. I commissioned that for them as a donation from, I remember, Mark, Junilo. But yeah, as that part of that querying, you could receive like a DG asset. It can issue a DG asset for you. But there's still, how do we know that it's your node? You would also have to provide like a signature and an address. But I think that just makes the node tools very complicated.
Yeah, that was rather my conclusion. Yeah. I mean, I began to really think the problem in the way to do it is to do it much like we did the "Not Your Keys, Not Your DigiByte" campaign. You just have it that we put a badge out there, much like that one, which is I run a node, and you get everybody to do it as a kind of badge of honor on a DigiByte.
Yeah,
that felt like a simpler way of doing it.
Yeah, I want to grow this DigiAsset ecosystem, and I want to show I want to show what it's capable of. You know, not just as NFTs and whatnot. In terms of like profile pictures, and I love a lot of the projects out there, but there's a lot of this technology, and I think how do you feel about I know this is a little off topic of nodes, but how do you feel, Renzo especially, how do you feel about the DigiAsset protocol? How adaptable, how is it to work with? Have you worked with it much?
Well, I think that there are 3 people in the world being able to actually code with the DigiAsset protocol. Matthew, me, and someone else on Change Angel. But it's a cool protocol to work on because at the end it's just a DB transaction, and you need to figure out which command giving you a pre-return field to make it works. I have a library called DigiByte.js, which has the DigiAssets protocol implemented. It's not quite shown to public yet because it's not finished, but it can create, send DigiAssets and all those stuff that we make with DigiAssetX, but with code, with your own code. And it's quite easy if you understand things behind it. And as DigiAsset protocol inherits a lot of its stuff from the current coin protocols, then there's some few documentation out there to get to understand it. Problem begins when you start digging into the version 3, which is one that Matt developed a few years ago, because there's not much documentation. So at the end, you need just to reverse engineering what's on the blockchain. But once you figure all that up in your head, then it's quite easy. So yeah, it's easy if you study it properly.
That's good, man.
So we need a decent website with documentation for developers. It sounds like.
I try to document a lot of that stuff in my library. I already finished the documentation part of the creation of assets with examples and everything. So yeah, so I want to just launch that or finish that when I get to make my own like light wallet for Windows, which allows us or everyone to use their hardware wallet with DGS. Once that's done, I will properly publish that library because it's already published, but it's kind of hidden the DGS stuff in order for people not to use them and by some bug or something burn their assets.
Okay, that's cool, man. Looking forward to your hardware wallet. Not your hardware wallet, sorry, but your desktop client. That would be awesome.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah, give it a couple of years because it's a big
project. No worries, no rush, man. We're a long time horizon here. The blockchain's not planning on stopping anytime soon. So
yeah, let's see how it goes.
I wanted to briefly talk about something which I've been working on, which is slightly off topic, but I think some of you know about this. As you know, back in December, we had this problem with the testnet network where there were basically no DigiByte seeders for the testnet network working. If you don't know what a seeder is, it's basically when a new node a CEDA is basically a server running a lightweight DNS server that continuously crawls the DigiByte network looking for full nodes. And it then will blacklist ones that go offline a lot. And it basically, when a new node joins the network, inside DigiByte Core is hard coded a list of addresses to some CEDAs. And the new node will connect to that, and the CEDA will provide it with a list of, let's say, 15 IP addresses of full nodes it can connect to. So it's a way for new nodes to easily find other nodes to connect to when they first join the network. Now, the CEDA network is not very robust at the moment. I think we've only got a couple of mainnet nodes that work, or mainnet CEDAs that work, and actually no testnet CEDAs. That's one of the things we're trying to fix. So I've been working with help from John Song from the Alliance to try to create an organization called or an initiative called the DigiByte Critical Infrastructure Team. And basically, we're just there to help coordinate getting people to run CEDAs. And then once we've done that, we'll be helping to work to coordinate to get people to run nodes. So it's kind of like, we want everybody to run a full node, but what we're asking for people who join the DigiByte Critical Infrastructure Team to do is to say, I will run a node, but I will also commit to running this node for a fixed amount of time, and I will keep it online. Because the problem is that right now, we only have a few testnet nodes, but we actually need a few people to say, I will keep this up and running. I will ensure that we have the bare minimum to keep this network working. So if anybody has the means to do so, like if you've got a server somewhere that you can run this on, the CEDA software is very lightweight, and it would be great if you could help out. We're trying to get a few distributed around the world so that there's, a couple in Asia, a couple in the States, a couple in Australia, whatever, so that we can then add these to DigiByte Core and to the mobile wallets and everything, just to make it easy for new nodes to connect to the network, both for the mainnet and testnet.
Now, hey, Ollie, is that something that would there be an issue doing that? I'll say out of your house, run it on a machine, or was that something that would be better run on a VPS?
I think probably not. I think you need it on a server. The main problem is that it needs. I think ideally it needs to always have the same IP address on the machine. Yeah. It's probably best to run it on a server. I mean, the software is very lightweight, but because the address of each of these things is written into DigiByte Core, it's actually quite a big commitment to do this. I mean, you need people to basically say, I will do this for a couple of years. And, given that people move, and there's all sorts of reasons why that address might change if you're doing it on your home network, then it's kind of better to have it running on the server.
Because
yeah, go on. Sorry.
Like in my case, I know I do not have a static IP, but I know my IP has not changed in a couple years. But I also own my own domain, which I could point to that and then change the DNS entry. If that would ever change, if my dynamic IP address would ever change, I could update that, which obviously it would be offline for a day or two. But that's what was kind of going through my head, and you and I could talk about it offline at some point.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a possibility. I mean, what we're trying to do is to get. I mean, I'd like to see maybe 4 testnet CEDAs, permanent testnet CEDAs, and about 8 to 10 mainnet CEDAs. So the whole point is we have lots of redundancy. So if 1 or 2 of those go offline for a bit, it's not the end of the world. But then we are asking everyone who's going to do this to kind of commit, and that's really what the critical infrastructure team are there for. We're there to sort of say to people, please commit to these guidelines that you will do it for a year and you'll keep it online and you'll check that it's working, and we'll contact you if there's a problem and you can fix it. And if you can't run it, then let us know and we'll find someone else you can take over. So right. That's really the goal there of just trying to kind of, I think I've been kind of calling it coordinated decentralization. So we're not dictating anything as a group. We're keen not to centralize anything. We're simply just trying to kind of help a group of people come together and ensure that there's kind of some accountability in that we know everyone who's running it, and we know everyone who said that they will keep it offline. So if one goes offline, you can say we know who to contact and say, hey, by the way, your seeder's not working. Can you go fix it? And that way, we just make the whole, at least the seeders, really robust and and know that they'll always work. Because right now we have a problem that the testnet, the only way to connect to the testnet right now is to find someone else running a testnet node and manually add the IP address of their node to your node, and then that node will then give you other IP addresses. So, and there has been some. I've discussed this with Ichiro 90 and Yoshi, and I think there's a possibility that we could do a 7.17.4 DigiByte release simply to fix this one issue. So, purely for the reason that maybe version 8 is still many months away, and it would be really nice just to get this one particular problem fixed. But the first step is to get more seeders. So if anyone wants to help and want a seeder, then that would be great.
Okay, yeah, that's something I'll definitely think about.
Yeah, and we can maybe get some more resources on that particularly too. We can add.
I have a full tutorial on how to do it if anybody wants it. I actually also have written an announcement document kind of explaining the purpose of the team and what we're actually trying to achieve, but I haven't quite finished it yet. So, but I will put it out soon.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely share that on all the socials and whatnot, however we can. That sounds very important. I hadn't thought about that. And I think that would be seeders. All right, I'll definitely look into that. Thanks for sharing all.
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't know what seeders were until a year and a half ago. I suddenly, when they were trying to sort it out, suddenly I learned. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that kind of makes sense. How do new nodes connect to the network? They need a way to find other nodes. And that's a good way. That's how Bitcoin do it and how Litecoin do it. I mean, you can also just add another node that's already connected and give your node a load of addresses. But the seeder is a much more efficient way of doing it because it actually supplies the best node, the list of the best nodes that node should use. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Well, it kind of goes back to just like being able to run the network more efficiently. So having that just, is, ups the efficiency of it.
Yeah, it's kind of like, for the network to function at all, you obviously need miners and you need full nodes. But this is kind of like the next level. So the network won't die without this, but we want the network to be really robust. We want it to just work for everybody. And, one of the things that happened with this testnet problem is Jonathan Chapello, who's been helping try and get DigiByte onto Decred Dex, the decentralized exchange. He spent all this time battling just to get testnet to work because it wasn't working. And all of that time, he should have been spending working on the code. He was fighting just to do the basics. So we want to get that. We want to fix the seeders so that it will just work for everyone.
Yeah, and you can kind of think about it too, Ollie, is it's not just enhancing the network, but it's also enhancing the developer experience.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's really and that's definitely an area that we need to work on. So I think this is a great initiative, and really glad that it seems like you're getting some support on it too. So that's good, and
yeah, it's good. We've got a few people planning to set up nodes. We don't seeders rather. So yeah, I think it's coming.
Yeah. Well, and then I think that, like you said, you didn't know it was an issue until a year and a half ago. So, it just takes time for people to kind of get it into their lexicon. And, we are fighting like a lot of other noise too. So it's a matter of, getting that information out there and cutting through the noise. And like Archie says, activating all the social media accounts with the information that we need to share that's, like critical infrastructure. So in main level participation. So I think it's awesome.
Yeah, and
And
I
any,
think it's good that Laura, that the Alliance and all of us are taking kind of an education perspective, education first, because even though, you know, DigiByte's been around for 9 years, Bitcoin's been around for 14 years now. It came out 2009 or so. Like there's not that many people out there that really understand like the nuts and bolts of everything. You know, it's really become a speculation, hype, and everything. So like we should be letting people know the shortcomings like of the seeding and show that, hey, we're able to take care of it as well. So I'm very interested in this.
well, I think it's something you can think about, like if these initiatives take hold and they get supported and we're able to, you know, exceed on expectations of what we feel like is needed at a baseline level, we're able to do that. I mean, really, it's a level of renaissance that's happening, and you know that would, I think, it's hard to find bright things right now when you look around the world, and you know, with us all working together and sharing our talents and our resources, you know, this might be a little corner of the world that we can say, I do see something going in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So there's I think a psychological thing to it as well. So yeah, I think it's something we can definitely all get behind.
Right. 4:30. Should we call it a wrap, Laura?
Let's call it a wrap. It was fantastic discussion, everybody. Like, thank you so much, especially, you know, Ollie and Renzo and Dan for sharing. And I know John and Frederick aren't here, but I wanted to thank them too if anybody's listening, because they're part of the kind of the when I think of node runners, I think of like, you know, like some sci-fi movie, and I'm like, there's like a group of node runners in our community that are pushing things forward.
I think Arnie was in that.
Node runners, nice. We can make that work, Laura. That could be a promotional thing.
Well, I was thinking about this, and like maybe we should have a meme contest for Node Runner, and like, you know, when whatever. I mean, it'd be really cool if you could win a Raspberry Pi. You know,
oh, hey, yeah.
You know, so that would be super
To
cool.
get,
But we gotta find one first. I mean, really, they're like truffles. They're the truffles of technology. But
I'm just going to show you this. This book called Inventing Bitcoin by Jan Pritzker, Pritzker. You can see, very thin book. It basically explains how you would invent Bitcoin from scratch. So it's obviously pretty relevant to DigiByte. But if you kind of want to understand how the different components of a blockchain all work together, this is a really good primer, because it basically explains how would I go from a regular ledger to a decentralized ledger? And how would you do that? And it's a really good read. You can read it in about 2 days.
Nice.
Like it's not that technical. It explains just enough of the technical stuff to kind of explain how it works. But no, it's a good. I recommend it if you want to kind of understand where nodes and light nodes and all of these components kind of tie together.
Oh, that's a good suggestion. Thank you, Ollie. I'll put that link as a book in the resources as well. I'll add that to it as well.
Cool.
But thank you, everybody, and I think this was a really good Sunday. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day or evening. And yeah, we'll put it in resources for everybody to have, and you know, we'll meet online, and let's, you know, get going on this. This is a good start, I think.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everyone. It's been a blast. Laura, I'll get the recording sent to you, and we'll probably post this on the videos archive as well, right?
Sounds good. Yeah, perfect.
All
Thanks,
right.
Archie.
Take care, everybody. Yeah, bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, and see you soon.
Bye.